On this episode of Rock School Proprietor Podcast, Mandy and I share some book recommendations that we think any music instructor or studio owner might benefit from reading. Both of the books that we recommend include some information that we think could be helpful when you're talking with instructors, parents, and even students in your school. Stay tuned for Rock School Proprietor Book Club. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. My name is John Kazicki.
And I'm Mandy York.
And Mandy, I want to do some thank yous to our listeners before we kind of get into it today. We are getting listeners from, a lot of listeners from California, Arizona, Mississippi.
Cool.
In the UK also.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, which kind of surprised me. Obviously, we're in Michigan, so for a long time we were getting, most of our listeners were from Michigan, friends and the like. But it's been cool to see other listeners elsewhere.
Yeah, I love it.
So I wanted to thank those listeners and maybe nudge, encourage them to join our Facebook group or even send us an email. We've done some of those Q&A episodes that I can speak for myself. Those have been really fun.
Oh, yeah. I love doing those.
Yeah, I've enjoyed doing those. Would love to do more of those. So please send us an email. Now, with that, we're going to do book club today, I think. Our little Rock School Proprietor book club. I know you're a reader.
I like to read. Mm-hmm.
You're a manual, old school pen and paper or
I like pen? A book in my hand.
Yeah, like a physical book.
Yes, mostly.
I do a lot more audiobooks these days, but I figured, let's talk about some of the most impactful books that we've read recently that relate to, I guess, music, but also our businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start with yours?
Sure.
So mine is going to be, I'll kind of sell this in the front end. Mine's going to be Hidden Potential by Adam Grant, which I know I've mentioned on the podcast before. What is your book?
My book is Music and Mind. It was edited by Renee Fleming. It just came out in 2024, last year.
Renee Fleming, I'm not familiar. Should I know Renee Fleming's name?
She is a very famous American soprano.
Okay. All right. So
yeah, well known.
What band was she in?
She's performed at the Metropolitan Opera, the Lyric Opera,
Gotcha.
all over the world.
Okay.
And she did write The Inner Voice. It's a biography that she wrote.
Okay.
Maybe 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. But Music and Mind, this was edited by Renee Fleming, and it's a compilation of essays by researchers, neuroscientists, writers, artists, arts administrators.
Love it.
Yes, I am so excited about this. So it's not exactly about running the business, but this is kind of, I was telling you before, this is kind of like a why book. Why music?
Why play music? Why have music part of your life?
Yeah, a little bit. When we've talked in podcast episodes about our why we do what we do. This has some of that in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting because there are so many different topics within this book, right? So Music and Mind, this is about music and wellness. But for example, some of the writers in here are Francis Collins. He was the former director of the National Institutes of Health. Nina Kraus is someone I like, PhD at Northwestern University. She runs the Auditory Neuroscience Lab.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a musician. Yo-Yo Ma has a piece in this book. Roseanne Cash.
Okay.
Ben Folds.
Okay.
Ann Patchett and Richard Powers might be familiar names. They're both authors. Ann Patchett writes a lot of books. Tom Lake was a recent one I loved by her. And Richard Powers wrote The Understory.
Okay.
And then dancers. Just a lot of different authors. So I kind of chose this because there's something for everybody in here too.
Yeah.
There's different sections of this book. Let me just read a couple. So they've grouped these essays into how and why, the medical muse, health in the spotlight, creative learning, music as therapy, science, a deeper dive, and the road ahead. So this is something that I've picked up and you don't have to read it from the beginning, right? You can
Oh,
bounce through
that's
the different
nice.
essays.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's
I mean,
cool.
when I picked it up, I wanted to hear what Ben Folds had to say.
Okay.
I'm a huge Ben Folds fan.
I've seen Ben Folds live.
Yes,
Such a good performance.
he's a great performer,
Yeah.
and he's really on this crusade to keep the symphony alive, the
Mhm.
symphony
Yeah.
orchestra.
Mhm.
So he tours and he performs with symphonies, and he talks about that in his piece in this book, Music in Mind. Some of the things, some of the articles in here, I guess, or the writings, titles are things like Musical Connections, What Can Music Do? We talk about music connecting people. Humans are musical creatures, the case for music education.
Mhm.
Belonging through music, investing in our children's future. Music and mysticism, nature, culture, and healing. That one Yo-Yo Ma wrote, really
Okay.
great. Musical enjoyment and the reward circuits of the brain. So, I love
Ooh,
all this
yeah,
brain stuff,
yeah.
know?
Uh-huh.
Music for chronic pain management, healing arts, music and memory, exploring the power of music to reach those with dementia and other neurological conditions. This one, rhythm and rhyme, supporting young children and families with musical play. So that goes right along with what I do.
Yeah, well, and probably with what I do too. Maybe
Well,
not
yeah.
quite as, depending on how the essay is structured, what age groups we're talking about, but that's going to speak to definitely what you do with Music Together and the early childhood stuff, and what I do with Michigan Rock School and grade school through middle school through high school.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like some of this stuff can get pretty heavy.
Yes. And I wanted to address that.
Okay.
I don't want the book to be intimidating because of that.
Yeah.
Like I said, these are writings by neuroscientists, right?
Yes.
But it's fascinating. We're just now learning about these connections between music and the brain and music and healing.
Mhm.
It's interesting. These aren't research papers.
Okay.
That's not what this is.
Good,
They're
good.
easy to read and easy to follow.
Mm.
But some of the ideas I've taken away in reading some of these articles is, they talk about there's one piece in particular by a school administrator talking about what the investment they put into their arts programs
Mhm.
was able to do for their K through 8 school. I mean, we're
Okay.
talking about, an improvement in behavior and test scores and things like that, right?
Yeah.
People like to say that all the time. Music makes you smarter. I mean, that's really broad. We can talk for a long time about that. That's
Well,
not
yeah.
a reason to make music.
It's interesting that you say that, because I generally will kind of, I don't want to say rail against, but I get a little I don't know, because I don't think there has been enough research to support that statement that
Right.
music makes you smarter.
I know. And it's such a broad statement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's research that's been done that kids in, choir and band programs are performing better on standardized tests,
Yeah.
things like that. I don't know.
But in those cases, I always wonder is it because that the kids who generally stay in choir and band are the kids who do better on tests?
Yes. Yeah.
Versus the kids because they understand music, they enjoy music, they feel like they're good at music. It's causation versus correlation.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But, I'm reading in here about a program they put $250,000 into arts teachers,
Mhm.
and not specifically music, but just the arts in general,
Yeah.
and the programmings that they developed, and how their PTA meetings went from 4 parents per meeting to, a full room, and getting community.
Yeah.
We're not talking about just like making the kids smarter, right? They developed more community engagement. Right. So really neat things here. How learning about how humans have been creating art as long as we've been here,
Mhm. We've kind of talked about that previously, about music, and it's been handed down as a folk art for centuries and longer.
So, I mean, all those kind of topics are covered in this book. So like I said, it's kind of a why book for me. When I start a new semester, get new families into my classroom. I've said this before on the podcast. I talk about, why we're here, what we do. This is a music immersion experience for the kids. Your participation is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I do my whole first week spiel, right?
Yeah.
And I always mention and this is, we're here too because music learning supports all learning,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
By giving your child this gift, the activities we do here and at home are going to help with language development, social and emotional skills, all that stuff, right? So I'm interested in these things and I like to express them to my families.
And that's the stuff that it's so hard, I think, to clearly provide like a firm statement to parents, because it's not just cut and dry. And this goes back to what I was saying about does music lead to better test scores? It's kind of this holistic approach.
Yes.
Where everything is sort of related, and having the arts and music as part of what you do as a kid or as a family or as a human being connects you more with what it is to be human.
Uh-huh.
And the idea that we sometimes present it as transactional, like kids who take music lessons do better in school.
Uh-huh.
It's not, I don't necessarily feel like that's truthful because of how it's presented, because it's none of this stuff is transactional, right? It's all it's a long game.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how do you want your life to be?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the research is growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great place to start. If you're inspired by one of these articles, there's plenty of footnotes and references that you can. Nina Kraus, for example, her website, Brain Volts, I think it's just brainvolts.com. She's got tons of stuff there on music and the brain. This is a professor at Northwestern University. But I do like to give this stuff to my parents, right? This is music supports the language development and the social emotional and the bonding in these early ages, all of this good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I explain too that, my training is in music. I'm a singer.
Yeah.
So I also love music for music's sake. I didn't get into music to get better test scores or learn languages faster or whatever, right?
Yes.
I just love music.
Yeah.
Because it's an important part of the human experience. And this book talks about that too. This isn't just, the brain. It's the deeper, maybe less unknown thing that how music makes us feel and how it connects us, right? So I like to convey that as well. And I like to say, so I've told you all of these great things music can do, but I also just love music for music's sake.
Yes. And that I chuckle inside sometimes when I get on the phone with potential families and parents, and I'll ask if their child might be interested in playing in a band with other kids, or they, even without that prompting, will say something like, well, I don't think they were looking for our child to be a professional musician or anything. I'm like, well, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you don't put your kid in baseball because you want him to be a professional baseball player or choose any other activity. No, this is an enrichment activity. It makes life better for everyone,
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to go into it thinking you're going to be super serious. I mean, you can, but maybe don't, because the when you decide to get super serious about music or whatever that is, it doesn't happen at the beginning.
Yeah.
It happens, far along in the journey. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And I've been saying that line in my spiel for a long time, music for music's sake.
Yeah.
But in this book, Music in Mind, Deborah Rutter she's now the former director of the Kennedy Center in DC. In her essay in here, she writes music for life's sake.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I need to change what I say, not just for music's sake, but for music for life's sake.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
So there's something for everybody in here.
Yeah.
I think. If you can't tell, I'm excited about it. I think it's exciting to learn, dig a little deeper in the different areas of music because there are so many different areas. Oh, and I didn't say this, reminds me, going back, everyone that comes into my classroom has a different motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Some really do want to read all the literature that I give them.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know.
Yeah.
If this activity, helps with the language development, I want to do more of these things, or I just want to know what's going on in the brain. Great. That's awesome. Some need to get out of the house on a Wednesday morning.
Sure.
They just have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, we just sign up for something every single morning of the week, and that's what we do. I've had lots of moms that dealing with postpartum, and this is a way to cope and deal, and all different motivations. I've had some that don't really seem like they really want to be in the room, actually. But I know all these things, right?
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter what brought you into this space, what your motivation was. You're getting it all. You're getting all this good stuff. It doesn't. Same with your older kids too, right?
Yeah.
My mom says I need to, do something. I need to pick something. I need to do an activity. Doesn't matter what got them in the door.
Right. Yeah.
All of this research and all of this good stuff is there, and we're providing it for them.
I think it's what's nice. I'm looking at the book. It's very thick.
It's big.
What's nice about what you're saying is that it seems like the book is offering supporting evidence that there are so many different reasons to do music. And there's not necessarily one correct one or one incorrect one, or there's vast, vast reasons. And then individually, people can choose why. And it validates every single one of them. Whether that's because you want your kid to get better test scores, or maybe you just love music and maybe you're horrible at playing it, but you just want to feel more connected to it and understand it more and study it more. There's like tons of reasons, and not a single one is wrong. And I think that's super valuable for instructors to understand, because I think I've seen it with my instructors. I know I've done it too, where I felt like I have to provide value and I can't read minds. Any given student is going to perceive value in their own way, and it doesn't necessarily have to align with what I'm viewing as valuable.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, don't be intimidated either. Like I said, it's not a beginning to end. You don't have to start on page one and go. You want to read, Johnny Cash's daughter's got a piece in here.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to read,
Right.
There's a name you recognize and you want to read what that person has to say.
Very
Fine.
cool. The book is
Music and Mind.
Music and Mind.
It's edited by Renee Fleming.
Okay. All right. Music and Mind, Renee Fleming.
Yeah.
Okay. So the book that I am going to recommend is Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. I do think we've talked about this a couple times.
You've mentioned
on the
it,
podcast. And specifically, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but to kind of drive it home for our audience, chapter 4 in Hidden Potential is specifically about musicians and how they learn. And this chapter was incredibly eye-opening for me when it came to understanding the concept of practice and like why we practice and how we practice, and the importance of having a sense of enjoyment in what you're doing versus just drilling and drilling and drilling to improve your skill. And that goes for anything. But what I loved is that chapter 4 was specifically about music, and they spoke with musicians, in particular, Dame Evelyn Glennie, who I wasn't familiar with her until I I read the book, or actually I listened to the audiobook. She's a percussionist. I should have taken better notes. Deaf. Yeah, she's deaf. Yeah, she's deaf and experienced a ton of roadblocks. Like, no, you're never going to be able to be a musician. And, one of those great stories, right?
Yeah.
There's a quote from the book. She says, worthwhile practice is where progress is made. And it's about quality, not quantity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the idea of like kind of being invested in, but it also is contrary to what we often do in music lessons, which is we do quantify it. We're like, oh, well, you need to practice for 20 minutes because we tell parents that because they want some sort of metric.
Yeah.
And so there's this like, it's like a game of telephone though, right? So if the instructor says that, and they tell that to the parent, then the parent's like, oh, 20 minutes. And the parents are reinforcing that with the kid. And the kid's like, all right, 20 minutes. I could just do whatever to get through this because it feels like homework. And by the time, and it's only 3 steps, but oftentimes by the time the kid gets to it, they're just like, all right, 20 minutes. And then I can go back to playing video games. So there's not necessarily any quality involved in it. It's literally just, I have to check this off my list because it's a chore. Oh, so yeah, chapter 4 is fantastic. And again, I've talked about that on previous episodes, but there's also stuff in here about how we learn and how we operate. Like with chapter 1, I think it's titled Instant Gratification Monkey, which I love that title. And Mandy, I was telling you, it's a lot of it is about procrastination. And I mentioned procrastination to you, and you were like, oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm good at that. I'm good at procrastinating.
I never, I'll be honest, until I read this, I never really thought about my procrastination. But when I was reading this to you, you were like, oh, yeah, I know that about myself.
Yes. Yeah.
But the light bulb moment for me was when I read this. And I think I'm paraphrasing here. It says, but in my notes, it says procrastination is not about laziness and it's not about time management, which I've always thought like, oh, I just don't feel like doing this, right? To me, I thought, well, that's just me being lazy. But it's about an emotional management problem. Like, I don't want to do this because I don't feel comfortable with it. I feel like I'm not good at it. Or I just like there's something about it that like doesn't feel good. So you're avoiding the uncomfortable feelings and the task brings them up. So that's the thing with procrastination. So let's see, what else in my notes? Oh, comparing learning music to learning a new language. Okay, so as an example, most parents could relate to taking a foreign language in school. Every day they go to class, they study the language, but how many can actually speak the language now, right? So that's one that kind of hit me. And I thought like that is so relatable to the parents who don't play music. And again, they may think like when it comes to their kids taking music lessons, well, they've got to go to the lessons and they've got to practice. However, that's not going to necessarily guarantee or lead to them being able to take this instrument and be able to play with someone else, right? Or be able to pick it up for fun and play a song that they enjoy. Or if they're camping in the summer, like bring people together. And so for what I do, that's how I approach it with parents now is I talk about like, okay, yes, there's this transfer of knowledge. However, when the best way to learn a language, and again, this is how I relate it to them. The best way for anyone to learn a language is to immerse yourself in that language and to, be in that culture and speak the language with other people who do speak the language. And music is really the same way. If you are with people who play, then you're going to be able to play too, because that's the language.
Yeah. I think the rock band, the group lessons, the rock band program is a great way to immerse yourself in the music, right?
Yeah. And again, for me,
A piece of it.
Right. And for me, it's always important to have these parallels, to kind of give these examples so that the parents understand how this is going to benefit them. And for anyone who has that preconceived notion, and I hear this all the time, well, I really think before my kid gets involved in your band program, maybe they should get some skills under their belt first, right? Maybe they should do some private lessons. And again, for the certain kid, maybe so. But let's talk about this other thing, and I can use that example as like languages.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is from the book about languages. So language experts, they say that the most common problem with language learners is the belief that studying the language is all about acquiring knowledge. And it's actually not. Learning a new language is about building a communication skill. And in that chapter, they speak with these people who speak 26 languages.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, they speak with a couple of those people, right? And how they managed to learn those languages.
Mm-hmm.
And they all pretty much say well, you just go and you live in that place and you learn the language, or you somehow immerse yourself in the language. So again, going back to what we do with music, it's not you can study it and that might work, but you've got to do it. You've got to use the language.
Yeah, it's so similar. I mean, and we can all just immerse ourselves in music and we can make music, right? Immerse yourself in a language and you can communicate.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't write an academic essay after just work, kind of immersing in yourself in a language and being able to communicate.
Right.
You can compare that to music too, right? You can immerse yourself in music. You'll be able to play music. You'll get satisfaction and all the great benefits of music. Maybe you won't be, you'll need more technical and deeper education in music to get to a certain level. But it is so similar to language learning.
Yeah.
You just immerse yourself.
Or have you ever had a conversation with someone who knows a ton about music, but they don't play?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing. They listen to music. They enjoy music. They take it in.
I love those people, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's refreshing to talk with those people because they don't know the nuts and bolts of it, but they're passionate about it. I love that. I love that. All right. My final takeaway from Hidden Potential is more related to or beneficial, I think, to us as teachers or studio owners. And so they call it the curse of knowledge. So they referenced a study at, I think it was Northwestern University, collecting data on freshmen who could relate to their instructors or not relate to their instructors. And the idea was that the more expertise that a teacher has on a subject, the further away they get from the beginner learner, right? So the curse of knowledge, right? You know so much about it that you've forgotten what it's like to be a beginner learner. So that's kind of like the bottom line. The more you know, the harder it is to fathom what you don't know. So the further you progress towards mastery of any particular skill or something, the less consciously aware you are. The less conscious awareness you have of the fundamentals. So in the study, they said, well, yeah, the people who are super experts on the subject, the beginners had a harder time understanding the class versus those who they are able to teach this class. Maybe they don't have the knowledge of the PhD level, right? So those instructors or student instructors got better ratings from the freshmen in the classes because they were more relatable, because they still understood what it was like to be a beginner learner.
All right.
And for us as music instructors, I've seen it. Like we fall into that.
Yeah,
right?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that before, but it makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the natural inclination is to study with the best of the best, right?
Well, that's you assume, okay, or from a parent's perspective, I want to have the best. I want to have this PhD level, like symphony expert teach my 7-year-old.
Yeah. Right. But the gap is too wide. And they would be better off with a perhaps younger instructor.
Yeah, obviously it's not hard and fast, but
yeah. But it makes sense.
Relatability with the instructor and like their skill set, and then the instructor also being able to relate to a student, super, super important.
That's great information to be able to relay when you're talking to parents. Because I think that happens sometimes.
Yeah. When
they don't, well, we were really hoping that we could get in with so-and-so.
Right. Well-meaning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well-meaning, but it's... that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be success there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Very cool.
Yeah. As an aside, I've been having a lot more success in my studio with having younger instructors too. And I think that's exactly why, because of their ability to relate to the kids at that early learning stage. Yeah. So
cool.
Hidden Potential, Adam Grant. I read this last year, so it's still a relatively new book. I definitely recommend that. An honorable mention, and I don't think I'm going to get into it just because I think I'd go on and on about it, but Start With Why by Simon Sinek is also a huge, huge favorite of mine. And we've talked about, well, you talked about it with your book recommendation, like the importance of like your why.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Start With Why is about, is like understanding your why you do something. But I think it's also helpful in like what we're talking about, understanding from your client's perspective why they're doing music.
Oh yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this one up. Yeah, I'm going to invite our listeners to send us email recommendations for books.
Yes, please.
Too.
We would love that.
Yeah, I would love to get some recommendations for books. And then maybe we can share those out too. So, well, Mandy, we'll wrap this up. Thanks again for listening to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. We'll see you later.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
If you have topic suggestions or, hey, maybe even some book recommendations for us, please contact us at info@rockschoolproprietor.com. As always, we would love to hear from you. We've put together some free resources for teachers and studio owners at rockschoolproprietor.com and a private Facebook group, Performance-Based Music Programs in Rock Schools. Please join us. On social, I'm at rock.school.proprietor on Instagram and John Kazicki on both LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Your ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are always appreciated. If you enjoyed the show and gained insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. All we ask in return is that you pay it forward, and please share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.